What I love about La La Land the most was its ability to tell an exciting original story while at the same time reference to and borrow from the golden age musicals of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, bringing both the old and new to create an emotional, awe-inspiring, and reminiscing movie experience. Just like Mia, I watched old movies the only way you really could before the internet, by borrowing them from the library. And at a young age, I was introduced to the unforgettable spectacle of golden age musicals. Throughout the years, I'd be reminded of those musicals, getting obsessed all over again, but never as much as I did after seeing La La Land. I mean, I couldn't believe my eyes. I was watching a golden age musical in 2016. It was such a joyful experience to see the obvious impact the Hollywood musicals of old had on this movie. So I wanted to dedicate this video to providing context to the major elements La La Land paid homage to from the Hollywood musicals of the Golden Age. Damien Chazelle, the writer and director of La La Land, wanted his movie to immerse us in a 1940s, 1950s style of filmmaking. He accomplished this in many ways, the most obvious being in the music. The soundtrack of La La Land was recorded the old-fashioned way, no synthesizers. They used a 95-piece orchestra all together in one room to score this movie. And that's not even the best part. The movie was recorded in the same sound booth as the famous MGM musicals, like Wizard of Oz and Singing in the Rain. Chazelle also did his best to shoot as much of the movie as possible on real locations and in real time. He also used minimal edits and long shots when making this picture. Back in the day, musicals did this out of necessity because of their technical limitations, but Chazelle did this because he wanted to. He wanted to make it in the style of the musicals his movie was based on. The culmination of all of this is best seen in Mia and Sebastian's first number together, A Lovely Night. The scene takes place during LA's magic hour, the time of day when the sun sets just right to create a beautiful purple hue in the sky. This effect can actually be accomplished in post-production, but Chazelle wanted the shot to be done in real time, just like how the Golden Age movies would have done it. So this meant him and his crew had only two 30-minute windows over 2 evenings to pull this scene off. The entire sequence is done in a single 6-minute take with no cuts, and given the time restraints, after they would finish the shot, Ryan and Emma would run back, get the sweat patted off of them, and do it again. And all that hard work paid off because what remains is a beautiful dance sequence that is not only reminiscent of the past Hollywood musicals, but also shows off a breathtaking view of Los Angeles, California. But these old filmmaking techniques aren't the only thing this scene draws inspiration from. I'm of course talking about the parallels between Ryan and Emma and the most famous dancing duo of all time, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Over the course of their careers, Astaire and Rogers appeared in 10 movies together, movies now commonly referred to as Fred and Ginger musicals. 9 of these 10 films were produced at RKO Studios throughout the 1930s. Some followed a similar formula, often involving the two lead characters not liking each other at first.
Oh, you must tell me what it is.
My nurses always put their arms around me.
Well, I'll call the house detective and tell him to put his arms around you.
Sound familiar?
But requesting Iran from a serious musician is just, it's too far.
My lord, did you just say a serious musician?
I don't think so.
Can I borrow what you're wearing?
Why?
Because I have an audition next week. I'm playing a serious firefighter.
In La La Land, A Lovely Night starts off with Mia and Sebastian not liking each other very much. But then, after some song and dance, they discover a new sense of chemistry between them. This particularly calls to mind to a few Fred and Ginger numbers, such as Let's Call the Whole Thing Off and Shall We Dance, or Pick Yourself Up in Swing Time. But the musical that this reminds most people of is from their most famous movie together, Top Hat. The whole premise is very similar. It's established early on that Ginger's character is annoyed with Fred's character and doesn't like him. And at the beginning of their first number together, Ginger is reluctant to be with him, but slowly gives in to Astaire's charm. They dance together and discover that perhaps he's not so bad after all. Both songs even have similar lyrics.
But as far as I'm concerned, it's a lovely day.
Fred and Ginger were Hollywood icons during a decade of economic depression and disparity, and Americans found comfort in the stories they starred in. And it was the chemistry they shared on screen that really fascinated Chazelle and inspired him to embrace the old Hollywoodness of the iconic screen couple and incorporate it into his own musical. Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone very much emulate that, with La La Land being their third movie together. In the past, they starred in Crazy Stupid Love, which was hilarious, loved that movie, and Gangster Squad, which was alright. The chemistry they've built over the years is very reminiscent to the chemistry of Fred and Ginger. When you see Ryan and Emma together, you believe that they're really falling in love. In this sense, Ryan and Emma are a modern-day Fred and Ginger, What they lack is the same amount of musical talent. I mean, how do you compete with this? In the musical business, the most talented are called triple threats, meaning they can sing, dance, and act. Ryan and Emma are not that. They are actors first and foremost, but that considering, they still do a good job. I was especially impressed by the small tap routine during the summer montage and was deeply moved by Emma Stone's audition performance. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers have delivered some of Hollywood's most incredible musical performances, and it was great to see a movie value their contribution to the film industry as an iconic screen couple.
I've been a movie-obsessed person my whole life, so there's no shortage of films, filmmakers that I love to steal from any chance I can get. When it comes to musicals, Stanley Donen, Vincent Minnelli, are some of the obvious iconic figures of the musical, and especially how Vincent Minnelli used color and how Stanley Donen used camera movement.
La La Land borrows heavily from Golden Age musicals directed by Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly. Donen and Kelly co-directed some of the greatest musicals of all time, such as On the Town, It's Always Fair Weather, and of course, Singing in the Rain. Most people familiar with Golden Age Hollywood probably know who Gene Kelly is, or at least have seen his famous Singing in the Rain performance. Kelly starred in many classic musical films during his career, and became one of MGM's most beloved stars. But people forget that he was also an accomplished director. Together with colleague Stanley Donen, the two of them wanted to push the boundaries of what film could do for the musical genre. They both felt that Hollywood wasn't taking full advantage of the technology made available to them, and felt that their work wasn't distinguishable enough from the likes of Broadway and vaudeville. They wanted their musicals to be a unique Hollywood experience. This desire pushed them to develop choreography that was made specifically for film. It was this commitment to creating experiences unique to the film industry that earned Donen and Kelly the chance to direct their own musical, and in 1949 they directed On the Town. Donen and Kelly's directorial debut was a smashing success and marked a major turning point in the musical genre. The movie introduced a number of new filmmaking techniques, but it's mainly remembered for bringing the musical off the sound stages of Hollywood, California, and into the real location of
New York, a wonderful town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. The people riding a hole in the ground. New York, it's a wonderful town.
Movies today are shot on location all the time, but in the early decades of Hollywood this wasn't very common. In fact, Donen and Kelly had to push hard in order to convince MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer to allow them to film in New York City, and he still only gave them just 1 week. They used most of that week to film the movie's opening number, where we see our lead actors singing in front of real New York landmarks. Chazelle pays homage to this number during the epilogue in La La Land, right here. Those Navy sailors buying bread imitate this scene from On the Town and represent Donen and Kelly's contributions to the musical genre. Though On the Town wasn't the first movie to be filmed on location, it still set a new standard of what a musical could accomplish on film. And then there was Donen and Kelly's second collaboration, the movie that would cement their legacies forever into the film industry, Sing in the Rain. It wasn't a huge hit when it came out. It wasn't even nominated for any Academy Awards. But today, Singing in the Rain is regarded as the best musical ever made, and even regarded as one of the greatest movies ever made. As expected, La La Land does not go without alluding to this musical masterpiece, as seen here when Sebastian swings on the lamppost reminiscent of Gene Kelly, and here, during this transition in Someone in the Crowd, looking like this transition in the Broadway Melody Ballet. But Chazelle was mainly inspired by Donen and Kelly's revolutionary use of camera movement. Rather than using a stationary camera that filmed long takes to show off the dancer's abilities, they opted for choreography that was not only for the dancer, but also for the camera. Take this long shot from Singing in the Rain. Gene Kelly invites the camera to zoom in onto his face, making the dance feel more intimate. Take this crane shot. The camera zooms out to show the scale of the set he performed on. I know this doesn't sound that impressive to today's audiences, given our modern tastes, but in 1952, this was groundbreaking stuff. The techniques that Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly developed laid down the groundwork for future musicals, and this is very much seen in La La Land. This might be part of the reason why it won Best Cinematography at the Oscars, because they replicated this style of camera movement, but with updated modern technology. Chazelle also pays homage to another movie, just directed by Stanley Donen. In the epilogue, when Mia is in Paris shooting the film that's going to make her famous, she is standing in front of the Arc of Triumph holding balloons. This scene references the musical Funny Face, starring Fred Astaire and Audrey Hepburn. In this movie, Audrey Hepburn also stands in front of the Arc holding balloons, but to pose for a picture taken by Fred Astaire, a picture that would later make her famous, just like how Mia's movie also made her famous. La La Land also borrows from another very famous Golden Age musical director, Vincent Minnelli. Just like Donen and Kelly, Minnelli directed some of MGM's most iconic musicals. Musicals such as Meet Me in St. Louis, The Pirate, An American in Paris, The Bandwagon, Brigadoon, and Gigi. The first time I watched La La Land, I immediately noticed how the season title card seemed inspired by Minnelli's 1944 musical Meet Me in St. Louis, a movie that also organized itself between the four seasons. In Meet Me in St. Louis, Minnelli used still artistic photographs to create transitions from one part of the year to the next, and Chazelle pays homage to this, especially through the last title card in La La Land. Here it looks at first like a painting, creating a similar effect to that of Meet Me in St. Louis, before revealing it's just a studio backdrop being carried off. But what Chazelle borrowed from Minnelli the most was his bold use of color. You can distinctly tell when you're watching a Minnelli musical. Combined with the costume design and set design, color was what distinguished a classic Minnelli musical from the rest. Minnelli was an artistic genius and the absolute best at making the most of the Technicolor experience. Being a perfectionist, he was very meticulous in the presentation of his films, making sure everything was exactly the way he envisioned it in his head. He even famously created his own shade of yellow that would be the only shade allowed in his pictures, that the studio dubbed as Minnelli Yellow. The makers of La La Land took the color in their film very seriously, presenting their movie to look like a traditional Technicolor presentation, similar to that of Minnelli's. But I think the biggest and most obvious element La La Land borrowed from the Golden Age musicals was from another Minnelli picture, An American in Paris, and specifically its 17-minute ending, Dream Ballet. What stood out to me, and for most people after watching La La Land, was its ending. By giving us a taste of what could have been for me and Sebastian, culminated in an emotional musical experience that not only commented on the traditional Hollywood ending, but also provided nods to the great Golden Age musicals of the past. When writing the script, Chazelle wanted two things to happen. One, me and Sebastian don't end up together, and two, for the movie to end with a 10-minute dream ballet. This was something mainstream Hollywood movies did all the time in the 50s and 60s, and to Chazelle's bewilderment, it hadn't been done since then, and he was determined to bring it back. He was chasing the ending to The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, a French new wave musical inspired by the American Golden Age musicals. After first seeing the epilogue, I was very reminiscent of MGM's An American in Paris, but Chazelle stresses that the Dream Ballet is not just An American in Paris. It's also The Bandwagon, Singing in the Rain, A Star is Born. The Dream Ballet provides an opportunity for the film to move away from its current reality and step outside of it, and allow the directors and choreographers to provide the epitome of creative filmmaking. I mean, look at the Girl Hunt Ballet from The Bandwagon. What's supposed to be a stage performance turns out to be an experiment of music, dance, and color. In fact, according to La La Land's costume and set designers, the backdrop of fantasized Los Angeles was very much inspired by this movie. And let's just take a moment and look at this. This set just screams MGM. The painted backdrops, the theatrical cutout scenery, it's just absolutely incredible to be seeing this in a movie in 2016. The Paris epilogue was also very impressive. The mural in the background started off as watercolor and then was modified to fit Chazelle's vision. It looks very similar to American in Paris. The waltz was made to be like the Never Gonna Dance number from Swing Time. This number famously took more than 40 takes to get perfect, and by the end, Ginger Rogers was dancing with bleeding feet because she had danced them raw. Another prime example of Fred and Ginger's determination for perfection. Mia's white dress was based on Ginger's from this scene. The set design from that waltz is similar to that of the Broadway Melody of 1940 during Fred Astaire and Eleanor Powell's tap routine. And if you haven't seen their tap dancing, you need to change that right now. The ending to La La Land is by far the best part of the movie, and I hope you have yet another reason to see why it's so awesome. And that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the movies and people La La Land paid homage to as much as I enjoyed talking about them. If there's other references to older movies you felt I should have mentioned, leave it in a comment in the comment section below. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe. I make video essays and editorials about movies, television, and animation. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, consider subscribing to see more of this content. If you haven't seen it, be sure to watch my last video essay where I talk about the history of Disney's Dark Age. I'm the Jaunty Professor, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.